Empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space. So if you're feeling judgment towards yourself, you're not going to be able to have self-empathy. If you're feeling judgment towards other people, you're not going to be able to show them empathy. So starting to get rid of that judgment is really key.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage.
20 minutes. That's all it took for Dr. Melissa Robinson Winemiller's dream career to begin unraveling. But the twist is that destruction led to a discovery that's revolutionizing leadership. She calls it EQ via empathy, and it's not what you think. It's not about being nice or soft, but it's more so about strategic human connection that drives measurable results. When we're thinking all about data and algorithms, Melissa is proving that our ability to truly understand each other isn't just valuable, it's invaluable. From trauma to triumph, this is the story of how one woman's worst professional experience became thousands of leaders' greatest asset. So, without further ado, Melissa, welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I've been looking forward to this. So, yay.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I think we're gonna have a very engaging conversation, and especially because we all face setbacks in our lives, but what you have to do is turn it into something strong, turn it into a strength, into something that you can help others with, and you've certainly done that. So I think it's gonna be a great conversation. Before we talk about the book itself, I think it's important for us to chat a little bit about who you are and ultimately what led you to writing the book. So if you don't mind shining a little light upon that, like for example, I know you went through a lot of different career shifts, a little bit of trauma, but I know that all must have led to some resilience in your life. So why don't you share a little bit about that and exactly how it led you to where you are today? I know that's a lot.
Yeah, no, because it was definitely not a straight path.
Of course.
So for anybody who's listening, who's like, I'm 20 or I'm 30 and I still haven't made it and I'm not going to make it, it is not a straight path. So I started out as a performing musician. I was a French hornist. I toured. I got to play with people like Ray Charles and I'm Steamroller, and I loved it. But I knew that that wasn't going to pay the bills, and I didn't have benefits as a gigging musician. So I went back to school, got my first doctorate, and started teaching. I was a professor of French horn. But
Mhm.
within my very first term, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues. And I had moved for this job, so I had no support. I had no family. I had, I didn't know where the grocery store was. I was still, brand new in this place. And so, long story short, because of the dysfunction of the system and just the toxic nature of where I was at, my career eventually folded. And at around, my mid 40s or so, I had to actually walk away from music, which was a really
Wow.
hard decision.
I'm
But
really sorry
even,
for that.
yeah, it was, you work for something and you don't expect something like that to happen,
No, of course not.
you know. But the thing is even though that happened, once I left, I couldn't walk away from what had happened. I couldn't figure out what had happened, how this had happened, how a group of people could be so uncaring about the whole thing. And I had done some consulting with my husband, and I had done some different things trying to figure out what happens next. But I just couldn't let go of this empathy idea that there wasn't the human connection that should be, that, it was okay to just kind of let me be the scapegoat. And so I started digging around, specifically for leadership programs, and I found second doctorate and decided this is what I wanted to pursue. Because even with the consulting my husband and I were doing, I kept seeing the same patterns over and over again of people creating these toxic situations and without any recourse. So the deeper I got into it, the more I was like, yeah, empathy is where I want to go with this, because I think we're really missing something here. And in the process, with all the research and stuff that I'm working on for my dissertation, I was like, well, why not write a book? I'm already kind of writing one. So
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think sometimes, like as you talked about in the introduction, it takes a, a setback, a failure to really find your place, right? And to see how you could best help others. And class has led you to, which is it's great. And being that you already have the dissertation, you're already in the writing world, it's the perfect foundation for it, I would say. Um, so all that being said, I think it's great, a great transition into the book itself now. The book is filled with data, showing that poor communication it costs trillions of dollars. So I wonder if you want to share a little about that. Like, how does leadership lead to those massive financial losses?
yeah. So the way my book is structured, what I'm actually looking at is emotional intelligence specifically and how empathy leads into that. So communication is one of those emotional intelligence skills that can really cause a lot of problem if leaders are not using it well. According to the Grammarly-Harris 2024 State of Business Communication Report, the US lost 1.2 trillion with a T dollars because of bad communication. They actually called it the 4-day work week because they figure that people lose 7.75 hours of productivity per employee per week to bad communication. So if you can actually connect and understand your employees before you're communicating, before you're throwing out a bunch of emails, before you're having a bunch of meetings that aren't really helpful, before, just the huge swath of communication we have going on now with AI, you can actually make that communication quality instead of quantity. So there with the empathy, it leads straight into those better emotional intelligence skills. And communication's a big one.
Yeah. No, definitely. And when you think about it that way, then I think it's so important that people do learn that empathy because, it's not only costing your company so much money, but then of course there's the well-being aspect as well that people struggle with. So that's so important. And you did mention AI, and it is super prevalent these days. Tell us a little bit about that. How is AI affecting empathy specifically?
So AI is really an interesting case because it doesn't have empathy. Empathy isn't necessarily about feeling. It's about connection and understanding.
Right.
But you cannot connect and understand with a computer, and it cannot understand you. It just can't. We're not at that point yet. But the scary thing about it is that AI can mimic empathy so that it looks like it has more empathy than like a lot of people. I mean, I can think of people in my life that seem to have less empathy than a machine. So, I mean, it's kind of scary when we think about it. I think it says as much about us as it does about AI. So as we continue down this road with artificial intelligence, the people who can really use empathy and connect human to human are going to have an edge because at least for the foreseeable future, artificial intelligence can't do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's exactly why what you're doing is so important because you're showing people exactly what to look for and how to get over. I mean, you go over red flags and beige flags, which I think is a very interesting system to help identify these leaders. Can you share that with our audience a little bit? What's a beige flag as opposed to a red flag? I've heard red. I'm not sure if I know the beige term myself, actually.
Yeah. So it's actually out of the dating world. If you're dating, because a relationship is a relationship, whether it's romantic or it's an employer or whatever. So if you have a red flag, that's a run, don't walk. This is not going to get better. A beige flag is one of those things where you'd be like, well, maybe this doesn't sit with me quite right, but it's not a deal breaker. Maybe this is just one of those human to human things where we're not going to see eye to eye all the time, but we can kind of get past it. So like in the dating world, a beige flag would be like, okay, he leaves the top off the toothpaste, but he's basically or she's basically all right. A red flag would be, yeah, this person screams at me every night. I'm not even going there. And it's the same with any relationship.
Exactly. Well, hey, it's really interesting when I think about it, the romantic relationship as compared to the workplace because it's very similar. It needs to be nurtured. You need to identify those sorts of things. So I guess when
Yeah.
you see those red flags, you need to take some steps to improve upon those particular persons. And I'm assuming your content and what you do with your book kind of just is like sort of a foundation or a framework that they can work from for improvement.
Yeah. for those in leadership positions or even just for people. I mean, that's the thing with empathy. You talk about a transferable skill that can go anywhere, because we all have to be a leader of one. We all have to lead ourselves. So even if that's where you're going with it, you can use empathy to be able to lead yourself better, and make those connections with yourself. Because if you are disconnected and don't understand yourself, you're never going to be able to show that empathy for anybody else.
That's true. Yeah, so it starts with you then, I guess, is the main point to gather from all of this, kind of
Yes.
introspectively. I think this is a great time for us to transition into the book writing itself. But before we do you mind sharing your book cover with us? I always love to give a spotlight on the design work.
Yeah, you bet. Because the person who did my cover, there we go, really did a fantastic job, I thought.
Yeah, lots of abstract shapes or ribbons, I guess you could say. That's very cool. Is
Yeah.
there
Yep.
a message underlying that?
Yeah, it's that idea that we really are all interconnected, and
To
that
connect,
even though there's the different emotions with the different colors and the different textures, that at the end of the day, we really are all interconnected. And, it's kind of worth it to remember that as humanity, none of us are completely alone.
right? Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing I thought when I saw that too, just the different ribbons weaving into each other. It goes to show exactly what we should be aspiring to become in our own workplaces or lives or whatever it might be, and just watching out for each other.
Yeah.
Um, so that being said, let's chat a little bit about the writing itself. I mean, writing about the trauma, I'm sure there's a lot of vulnerability that goes into it. It's a hard topic to think about, especially because you went through it yourself. Um, so how do you balance sort of that your own well-being while writing about it also and just sharing this personal experiences? I think that's something that a lot of authors might struggle with, actually. Did you have a certain strategy?
I didn't.
No.
And it was difficult because I was kept quiet about it for a long time. So the thing is even though I couldn't talk about it, being able to put it on paper, it was a way of communicating what had happened, you know?
Mhm.
And the thing is too, is I didn't really put it in because of me. I think I put it in because I think people need to see the damage that this lack of empathy can cause. And my thing has always been that if I can stop one person from feeling alone, then I've been a success. So that's the biggest reason that it's in there.
Understood, right. And it also goes to show like when you by sharing those stories you connect with the reader more, which makes them better inclined to follow what you're saying and like commit to your framework and your ideas. And speaking of which, I understand you're kind of using this to launch the Center for Empathy and Leadership Innovation. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I think it's so cool that you took the book and you're scaling it more so than you know it needed to be. So it's great. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's still about a year out, give or take, before it's a finalized thing. But my vision for this is that it's going to give me the latitude to be able to write my next books. And because I don't have an academic position, and after what happened, I don't really want an academic position, it'll have some place that I can actually do some studies and do some work through that. Vanessa Van Edwards, who has the science of people, does that. She has her own place where she does her work on her books and stuff, and that's what I'd like to see. Plus, eventually it'll give me a place that I can really bring people in to be able to do training because I'm working on a methodology both through this book and the next book that I've already started on. And it'd be a nice place to put that all together with a big bow on it.
Okay, well, I love that. That's so exciting. So it's still kind of in the works then, from what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
It's on the
got it.
very, very ground level, but it's all coming together. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. So in that case, then what I can tell our listeners then is to perhaps head over to your websites and your links so they can stay in touch and you know be in the know for when it is ready to go. Would you like to share this with the audience so that they know where to best connect?
Yeah. So you can catch me at my website, which is EQ and that's V as in Victor, IA, empathy. And right now, if you click on the link and leave your email address for my newsletter, I am giving away a free chapter of the book. So you can kind of check it out and see what you think. And then I'm always on Instagram and LinkedIn, especially. And I have my own podcast, which is called The Empathic Leader. And then, of course, the book's on, Amazon and Barnes and Noble and the usuals.
Course, the usuals. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. We're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today, so you can go ahead and click on over and stay in the know about the initiative in addition to the book itself. But speaking of, social media and posting, I know you had a recent post that talked about how unfortunately something happened with your book recently that you're dealing with right now involving copywriting. I'm wondering if you want to shine a light on that for us, because I think that it's very unfortunate that it happened to you, but you did something remarkable that's protecting you right now that I think a lot of authors can learn from. Do you want to shine a light on what we're talking about here?
Absolutely, because from what I understand, it's becoming more and more prevalent. I had
Mm.
someone pirate my material and put out a workbook and say, this is the workbook that goes along with the Empathic Leader. And I mean, they even had my name on the cover, not as the author, but like according to Melissa Robinson
Oh
Winemiller,
my
kind of,
goodness. They
yeah, it
even
was
used
pretty,
the name.
yeah, it was pretty bold. So, I mean, and the thing is this person had like 10 or 20 books from other authors that he had done the exact same thing, and he's put them out there at $15 a pop. But
Wow.
the one thing that's going to protect me is I actually had a copyright on this book. So when I went to Amazon and said, look, this is copyright infringement, I could actually say, here's my copyright registration number. It was done before this other book was published. I already have all the rights. And I think as authors, it's really important to know that, because I didn't know that before I started this journey.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's such a shame that happens. But thank goodness you did have that copyright. I think that anybody right now, if you haven't thought about that process, do it. What was the process? Was it challenging? Was it easy to get that protection?
And honestly, my publisher did it, which I'm so grateful to her, because
Right.
I
Oh my,
wouldn't have known any better.
yeah, yeah. So there you have it, guys. You never know what might happen down the road, even if it's not, right after you publish a book, but years down the line. It's always important to have that safety measure. So highly recommend that as well for myself. Thanks for sharing that and being so vulnerable about it. So now we know that your content is the authentic one, and you can go and we can check that out. But aside from that, I'm wondering if you happen to have any other writing tips for the audience, say anything that they could potentially, take with them and benefit from as they go and write their own books after this podcast.
The big thing is just to be brave and do it. I don't know how many people I've talked to that are like, I want to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I'd love to write a book. But they just, I mean, it's a big project, but you do it one word at a time, right? So
Exactly.
if you have something to say, man, the world needs to hear it. Go say it.
Right. Yeah. And the more you delay, this is never going to happen. You have to schedule out the time so you can sit down and actually make it happen.
Yeah.
It's a big tip. You're right, though. There's so many people I've talked to myself that too, they have an idea, they just haven't quite gotten there. So maybe that goes back to empathy a little bit, just because you have to be empathetic to your own needs as well. If you want to write a book, be empathetic to your own desires and make it happen, schedule it in. I'm not sure if self care, would you say something that is within your book as well, or maybe it's a
Yeah.
little bit different.
Yeah, I talk about self empathy. So it is about understanding
Right.
and connecting with yourself. And if you're going to write a book, you're going to have to understand, what you can do, when you can schedule it in, how you want to make this happen, and probably connect with yourself as an author before you can actually put pen to page.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's interesting. I think there's just so many different types of empathy. So just start cultivating it, and you can sprinkle it into all those other areas of your life.
Yeah.
So with all of this, I'm wondering now if listeners could implement just one thing from your book starting tomorrow, what would it be?
I would say to remember that empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space. So if you're feeling judgment towards yourself, you're not going to be able to have self-empathy. If you're feeling judgment towards other people, you're not going to be able to show them empathy. So starting to get rid of that judgment is really key.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I guess kind of think of things on a positive note then. Don't worry about others or judging others. Worry about, I feel like I'm talking like a little kid, like, worry about yourself.
Yeah,
Don't judge others. Think about your own successes and working and build yourself up while also being caring for others too. So, totally get what you mean by that. Thank you for sharing that. It's a perspective change.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation, and I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about the book when the platform's ready to go too. I think that's an exciting extension of it. And I always recommend to authors that you should always have that platform because you have your book, but having the platform only enhances it too. So amazing insight with that. I'm wondering, do you want to share a little bit about the creation process of that? I know you talked a little bit about it before, but perhaps from the author's standpoint, what would be a step for them to get started with in that regard?
yeah, absolutely. So I know this is kind of old school, and I'm sure there's a way to do it on a computer, but the first thing I did was get a bunch of 3x5 cards. And I just started writing down ideas, one idea per card, so that I could lay them all out on the table and look at them and say, oh, I want this one to go here, and this is going to be here, and this is a whole chapter, so this stack goes over here. And it just was a way for me to be able to kind of brain dump, where I could just kind of throw them all out there on the table and then start organizing, And I had my colored pens and I was going for it. So
Like a visual learner, a visual organizer with the colored pens and the Post-its. I think it's a great way to do it though, for sure. It's keeps everything in one place and then you can look at it and that's how you get those ideas flowing. So I like that. Perfect.
thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for hopping on today. It's been an insightful conversation and we learned a ton, especially make sure you get your copyright, but also empathy, right? Empathy for yourself, for others around you, for fellow authors. It's all super important. So, yeah, thank you for joining us today, Melissa. I think it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you so much for having me here, Danielle. And it's just been a pleasure.
Yeah, always. See everybody, again, you'll be able to check the description box for the links to all of Melissa's content. You can stay tuned for the framework coming out soon. And until next time, just thank you for joining us. If you're inspired by today's conversation, check out Melissa's work, but also continue on your own author journey. And remember that your knowledge deserves to be shared. So just keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.